Good morning, and thank you again for the invitation to appear before this committee. Today, I'll provide you with the perspective of the Canadian defence and security industry and the subset of companies that make up Canada's cybersecurity industry. Canada's cybersecurity industry is world-class. According to studies carried out by ISET and StatsCan between 2018 and 2020, the sector grew over 30% in terms of employment, R&D activity, and revenue. It's a fast-growing global sector expected to outpace traditional IT in terms of spending. However, only 8% of the sector's revenue is derived from Canadian government contracts. 8%. The sector sells 3 times as much to our Five Eyes allies as it does to the Canadian government. Those numbers speak to a central challenge we face in this country when it comes to cyber. Our allies see more value in Canada's cybersecurity sector than Canada does. Something's wrong with that picture. On one side of the coin is that Canada needs to acquire more from its own industrial base, using procurement as a policy lever to drive innovation and build scale in Canadian businesses. On the other side of the coin is that Canada needs to procure at the speed of cyber. A slow procurement process is a recipe for buying out-of-date or obsolete technology. Innovation cycles in this domain are measured in months, in sometimes weeks. Resolving these issues boils down to one word: collaboration. Canada requires a much greater degree of collaboration, cooperation, knowledge sharing, and co-development between government and the private sector. Some positive steps have been taken towards this, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. While agencies like CSE are very capable, CADSE's research has shown our government is falling behind our allies when it comes to working with the private sector in an institutionalized way. Our allies are collaborating with industry in real time right now in Ukraine. The Canadian government needs to establish a recurring forum for dialogue and discussion on cyber issues with all the key players: industry, D&D CAF, CSE, CCCS, GAC, and public safety at the table. Canada needs improved systems for threat sharing that combine open sources with government and industry sources of information about breaches, indicators, and potential responses. This will mean rationalizing what is unclassified and what remains classified and who has access to what. Again, our allies are on the forefront of this activity. We should consider sandboxes and collaborative lab spaces to test new technologies and capabilities together at scale, and talent exchanges between the public and private sectors like UK's Industry 100 program and a new talent exchange just launched by CSE. That could start to address the cyber talent shortages we're all facing, because cannibalizing each other isn't going to work. Reservists with cyber and computing skills that are employed by companies could be an attractive way to support reconstitution of the CAF, so long as the government does not claim the IP and patents that reservists create while employed in the private sector. It's also important to note that the broader defence industrial base, or DIB, which includes companies making everything from satellites to ships, has become a prime target for cyber threat actors. Companies are increasingly incorporating technologies like artificial intelligence into their products. We know that countries like China and Russia will pursue Canada's AI through all available vectors. Canada's DIB is closely integrated with the CAF and with the American DIB. What we do in this sector is highly valuable, and that makes us vulnerable, given that 90% of the Canadian defence companies are SMEs, and many lack the ability to defend themselves against a state-sponsored cyber attack. There's a growing requirement to secure Canadian defence companies large and small. The Americans are, not surprisingly, ahead of us. Very soon, a demanding and mandatory cybersecurity standard will start appearing in Pentagon defense contracts. This is known as Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. CADSE's argued that Canada should adopt this standard by reference. CMMC will likely become a de facto Five Eyes, if not global, standard for defense firms. Taking time to contemplate a separate standard in Canada could become a competitive disadvantage for us and a non-tariff trade barrier. And while CMMC is new, other regulations need modernization for cyber that needs to be done with industry at the table, since we're at the technological bleeding edge and we own the lion's share of the infrastructure. In conclusion, effective cyber defense at national levels is a team sport. If our allies get this, why can't we? Thank you, and I'll be pleased to take your questions.